I'd like to give the floor to Professor Darrell West, who will moderate the panel this afternoon. And Professor West is the Vice President and the Director for Governance Studies at Brookings Institution. Thank you very much. Professor, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt your applause for me. That was very short-sighted on my part. That won't happen again, believe me. But thank you, Ambassador, for hosting this event. It's a beautiful setting here, surrounded by beautiful artwork, so it'll be a great setting to discuss digital diplomacy. For those of you who are Twitter fans, there is a hashtag RT Diplomacy. That's RT Diplomacy, as in retweet diplomacy. So you can pose comments and questions if you would like so. And I know at Brookings, we used to be in the habit of telling everybody at the beginning of our events, don't forget to turn off your telephones. Now we tell people, keep them on and tweet. So feel free to do that if you are so inclined. As the ambassador pointed out, the world is becoming more interconnected, and information comes from around the world in real time, 24 hours a day. So digital diplomacy and the use of social media in foreign policy are now part of our daily routines. These tools help people engage in foreign policy and respond to a wide variety of events. But there also are interesting questions about the degree of engagement and the actual impact of these tools on the operations of foreign policy. A growing number of governments as well as international organizations use digital diplomacy as effective tools to engage with various actors. They believe it is a good way to connect with the public, to nurture various kinds of dialogues, and to combine traditional diplomacy with digital strategies. So our panel tonight aims to analyze the role of social media and mobile technology and see how foreign policy has changed as a result of that. We're going to look at both the opportunities as well as the possible pitfalls of digital diplomacy. How should governments interact with each other, and how should they interact with the general public? So I'm going to jump right in with P.J. Crowley, who many of you recognize as the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs, now a professor at George Washington University. So P.J., we're seeing digital tools and social media play a role in Egypt as well as many other places around the world. How are these digital technologies affecting traditional diplomacy? And I think you have a microphone next to you. Each of you should have.
I should start out by saying that I am a disciple of Katie Dowd. Katie, 3 years ago, walked into my office at the State Department and said, "You have to start tweeting. You've got to show the example." And I came to love it and still do it. Although I checked this morning, and even though thanks to Katie's help, early on I was leading Fidel Castro by tens of thousands of Twitter followers, I'm now trailing him by 40,000. So I need Katie to help. It's a great question, Darrell. I think we can see the challenge of diplomacy and public diplomacy, of which the digital element is a crucial and growing one of growing importance. With the struggles over Egypt, how you have a Brazil that's confronting unprecedented protests there. We tend to think about digital diplomacy in terms of its opportunity, and of course it is, as our former boss Hillary Clinton used to talk about, moving beyond just government-to-government dialogue and reaching out to populations as well. But there also is another dimension, in that there is inherent tension between diplomacy as it is traditionally practiced and public diplomacy, with which the digital element increasing the time pressure on government bureaucracies to meaningfully respond. Diplomacy is becoming, because of technology, becoming more participatory. It used to be traditional diplomacy, and maybe the ambassadors in residence will say, yeah, but you go into a quiet room, you close the door, you are candid in private, you are measured in public. And of course, governments for a long time had a genuinely important and vital monopoly, the monopoly on the flow of information. That's gone. now the populations around the world, they have a higher quality of information thanks to technology. They are participants in foreign policy. They are spectators in foreign policy. They want to engage, and they want the kind of two-way dialogue that technology provides. So what are the ramifications of that? Obviously, with technology, and we've dealt with this before. In modern times, we've had the CNN effect, the Al Jazeera effect, now the Facebook or Twitter effect. That is putting significantly more public pressure on governments to respond. It's not changing foreign policy, in my view, but it's certainly compressing the amount of time available to governments to provide a meaningful response. And probably we're seeing that right now as much as anything in what's happening in Egypt. Obviously, technology has helped to facilitate not one coup, but two in Egypt. You've got a profound number of people coming to Tahrir Square, putting pressure on the status quo to change the status quo. Malcolm Gladwell famously said, "The revolution will not be tweeted." Well, yes, it is. It's being tweeted, it's being televised, and it is upsetting the status quo, even though it doesn't necessarily translate into public, political influence in what follows. So traditional diplomats are struggling to figure out how does this digital element fit into the practice of diplomacy. Ultimately, the culture will change slowly, but as we know, technology is changing even faster.
So Katie Dowd, in addition to being PJ's mentor on social media, you now serve as senior advisor to the chief technology officer at the White House, and prior to that you were the innovation advisor to then Secretary Clinton at the State Department. So you have worked on capacity building for digital tools. How is the U.S. government using digital technologies to involve people and affect global development?
Sure. Well, Thank you to the ambassador, and thank you to the embassy for hosting. I'm excited to be here, and PJ is wrong. He was way moving forward before I even stepped into his office, but it is a privilege to see him again. In terms of, I think I'm really speaking in terms of my past role at the State Department. When I first came in there working for Secretary Clinton, we really thought long and hard about how we were going to actually tactically begin to make change, and how were we going to implement process and bring about tools that we could start to get diplomats using every day, from the embassy to back here in Washington. And so a lot of the ways we've done that is, I think a lot of innovation is really about adaptation when we talk about government. And I'm sure it extends beyond, but government, there's processes in place and checks and balances that are important, and so it's about adaptation and agility to move forward. And so I think the way we did it, in some ways we did it externally in one way. Secretary Clinton had a program called Civil Society 2.0 that ultimately brought forth another program called Tech Camp, which is still running today under Secretary Kerry, and is really about how we as the government are helping facilitate technology training for civil society around the world. We know that we can't solve problems alone anymore. As you talked about, this is a one-to-many, social media facilitates a one-to-many, and the internet is a many-to-many communication tool. So we can actually work on shared challenges together through a lot of these tools. And so in doing that, we want to make sure that we are building the capacity, not just internally, but externally, so that civil society can actually have access to the tools and the experts so that they can continue to advance their mission, whether they're helping empower women and girls or they're advancing water issues in their home country. And then internally, I think it's thinking about, we really started to begin to provide training at all levels, from ambassadors on down to at missions. How are we building a social media strategy for each embassy? How are we helping train diplomats as they join the Foreign Service in terms of using digital tools? And that kind of whole of government change and beginning to alter those processes, I think, brings about the culture change to where I actually was reading today that Secretary Kerry said, at some point it will no longer be called digital diplomacy, it will just be diplomacy, because it will all be so standard, which I think is totally right on. We won't have this context anymore. It will become so course of business that this will be a part of everyone's daily diplomatic engagement. And so in thinking about that, I think it starts with, not only what can we do as a government to provide training internally, but what are we doing to also facilitate that training and access externally.
So if you're right in that last statement, I'm in trouble, because we set up a Center for Technology Innovation at Brookings, so I guess that means soon it will become a Center for Innovation. Zina Rahman, you serve as Special Advisor to Secretary of State Kerry, and you focus on global youth issues. So how are you working with young people? They are, of course, a special challenge in this area, as well as a special opportunity. How are you focusing on them to get them more involved with some of the current challenges?
So thank you to the Embassy and thank you to the Ambassador for hosting us here today. I see, my office and the focus of what we do part and parcel with, the innovation and the technology innovation or diplomacy that the State Department has really seen advance greatly in the last 5 years. I mean, I say this often to crowds, but it's true. My position wouldn't have existed 5 years ago. I think similarly, when we look at ambassadors tweeting, former spokespeople tweeting, that also wouldn't have existed 4 or 5 years ago. So we are accelerating our change and trying to meet kind of the demands of what the changes we see happening in the world. I think as we look at kind of the emergence of new centers of influence that seek greater voice and representation, there's certain trends that are informing that, and the trends really point to young people as critical actors, not just as recipients or passive recipients or folks who are going to respond to policies that come from above, but actors in all of the problems and opportunities that we see around the world. So what are some of those trends? Human well-being is on the rise. People are more in the middle class than they've ever been before. People are living longer than they've ever been before. The youth population in the world is 3 billion people under 30. Power shifting from the global north to the global south. Advances in technology and social media are accelerating the speed of social movements, and it's making the role of a regular citizen just more powerful. And then the ability to form networks and coalitions virtually is changing the dynamics of civic participation. So then you think about the role of young people within that if you look at the countries that have enormous youth populations, those are the countries that are also emerging as centers of influence and power. That, when we look at social media or technology, young people are digital natives. The internet is the new public square. I've heard that said before, but you think about how young people communicate online, and it's a way that's very fluid with their identities. And I was reading stuff about about American millennials today, that they're confident, self-expressive, liberal, upbeat, open to change. They embrace multiple modes of self-expression. 3/4 of them have a social networking site. 1 in 5 have posted a video of themselves online. I've never posted a video of myself online. Unfortunately, there are videos of me online, which I cringe at.
Who knows? Tonight might be the first.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not. But they're living their identities in a way that's different than what traditional diplomacy is, and the way we understand those archetypes of ambassador or Secretary of State, so on and so forth. And that, when you look at these networks that are building around the world and the tipping points that happen, whether in a place like, Brazil about public transportation, India about violence against women, any number of things, generally it's young people who are, tipping that point and who are maybe creating the fire that creates the movement that takes the movement from online to offline. And I don't know that young people or the people who are sparking these movements know why or know what is that catalytic spark that makes the movement go online to offline, but we know that it's happening. So all of those things just, I think are the things we look at when we think about how does our foreign policy respond to all these changing dynamics in a 21st century world. And in his first foreign policy address, Secretary of State Kerry said, "For the first time in human history, young people around the world act as a global cohort. They're more open-minded and more proficient with the technology that keeps them connected in a way that no generation ever has been before, and that we need to help them use this remarkable network in a positive way." So I think this sums up the mission of the office. It's how do we partner with change agents around the world, whether online or offline, and help have relationships with them and build capacity, as Katie said. So I want to just quickly kind of say the ways that we're helping. I think that our ability as State Department still to connect and convene is quite remarkable, and is still something that's one of the biggest assets in our toolkit. And so some of the, thematically, some of the things we've done is open up channels for two-way engagement. We historically have not been an institution that has had conversations that go, both ways. And so, we've done this through social media events that the Secretary's done, Youth Connect events. The President just did a big town hall event in Tanzania that had, Uganda and I think Nigeria were Skyped in and then live streamed for everybody to see. And that's really the norm, when we have big events that our principals do. We have online properties which link foreign audiences to subject matter experts around climate change, around economic opportunity, around social media. And it's 12 million people in 6 languages. I mean, we have substantial young people who are coming to our sites all the time. The capacity building piece, which I can go into more later, and Katie alluded to. And then I think the partnerships piece, whether it's supporting app creation in Africa, whether it's, helping create avenues or platforms for conversation that are safe spaces, online or offline, that haven't existed before. These are all the kinds of things we're trying to seed with young people in order to have a relationship, because I think we realize that it's not a given that any young change agent in the world needs to have a relationship with the U.S. government or the State Department.
Okay, thank you. So Gianni Riotta, you're the author of a new book entitled Has the Web Brought Us Freedom? Now, the interesting thing about this title is there is a question mark at the end of that title. So I assume by that phrasing that means you have some doubts about whether it actually has empowered us. So how do you see the internet affecting freedom and personal action?
Thank you. And thank you to Ambassador Bisogniero for inviting me to this amazing panel, and to all of you coming tonight. The book was written before Mr. Snowden exploit, so and as a line that I wrote just out of luck, and that says, what is a democracy in the big data era? What is democracy in an age where big data are available? And the question mark is there because the web, Mr. Kranzberg, first law of technology, says something that is quite interesting. Technology is not bad, is not good, nor is it neutral. So the web is not good, the web is not bad. The web is the way we engage reality in this time. There is no other way we can engage reality than not being online. Online is the way we live and do good or do evil in this era. And what is interesting is that 3 years ago, my former boss at Corriere della Sera, Guido Olimpio, is sitting there and listening to me, so I'm a little nervous. But 3 years ago, we were journalists before the internet came. We remember when Italian diplomats did not wear yellow sneakers at an official reception. And those were the boring days before the web came in. And if you wear yellow sneakers at an official Italian reception, diplomatic panel, then you're able to engage the youth, like the lady was saying before, because you have broken some kind of mental chain. But you see, 3 years ago, we were debating whether the Arab Spring was originated in the social media. And actually, if you check out the major publications, pretty much everybody wrote that it was. Then when we went digging the real data, it was not. There was no evidence, there is no evidence whatsoever on the record that the Arab Spring generated online. It generated in the remote villages in generations of resentment sparked by Al Jazeera. And then when Al Jazeera said, this is like the social media revolution, people actually said, well, there's social media, let's go on social media. And Twitter, Facebook spiked after the report on Facebook. So we gloated for a couple of months after this discovery. Haha, it wasn't. And timely, Brazil came, that was sparked by social media. Turkey came, was sparked by social media. In Egypt, for sure, this time social media had a much, much heavier influence than in the Arab Spring 3 years ago. So the reality is changing so fast that it's extremely difficult for us to catch up. And again, who owns the data? Since Ambassador reminded us that this is the year of Italian culture, in 2013 we also celebrate half a millennium since Machiavelli wrote his great political classics, The Prince. That is quite interesting, the most translated Italian book, beating even Dante Divina Commedia. Quite interesting. And so we got to reread it, and we did the homework, and then it's perfect. It works perfectly to describe Obama and the Chinese and Putin. I mean, it's perfect. The only thing that is missing in the power equation of Mr. Machiavelli is the social media. The only thing that really would make difficult for the Machiavellian prince to rule in the 21st century is that he decides to be a fox, he decides to be a lion, whatever, but then he had to confront and to engage the public opinion online. And so we are now trying to devise, what would Machiavelli say? Okay, what would Machiavelli say for the prince to use the social media to keep power? And while we're researching this, you know what we found out, at least I wasn't an expert about this, that Assassin's Creed is the best-selling video game that our kids play or that we play. The true bad guy of Assassin's Creed is called Machiavelli. So Machiavelli is actually online already.
Yes, that certainly has become a great brand. So let me throw out one quick question for each of the panelists, then we're going to go to questions from the audience. And the question is, what are the best uses of digital diplomacy that you've seen, and what are the worst uses? PJ, let's start with you. Best and or worst?
Well, I think it's not best or worst, it's experience. There are risks associated with this. You know, one, obviously, you know, give a couple of examples. Yesterday in Moscow, thank you. A Russian lawmaker tweeted out that Edward Snowden had accepted the offer of asylum from Venezuela, and the tweet was quickly taken down, either because it wasn't true, or more likely because no one wants to talk about it. So the danger here is that you get out in front of, you know, if you're a diplomat, you're using social media. You've always had these kinds of public encounters, but they happened in an embassy like this, in a room like this, without a global audience. The difference is now you're having this encounter online. It's significant engagement, but now there are digital fingerprints attached to it. We in America had an example with the embassy in Cairo earlier this year, sent out a tweet with a link to a Jon Stewart segment defending an Egyptian activist, comedian, television personality, the Jon Stewart of Egypt, who had been detained by the Morsi government. Now that's bold engagement. It is the very kind of dialogue using humor that, you know, in Katie's training manual, it says that they're supposed to do. Now the dilemma comes because in the segment, Jon Stewart calls Morsi, President Morsi, an idiot. You know, President Morsi took offense, right? Not surprisingly. Then the embassy's reaction was they took down their Twitter account, they took off the link, and they were seen to be retreating from the very dialogue that the technology is supposed to be advancing. So getting a comfort level, you know, with this technology, knowing how to use it, knowing where that kind of bright line is, remains a challenge for a bureaucracy as it moves into the digital age.
Zeenat, best or worst uses?
I wanted to hear what Katie had to say first, but I mean, look, if you think about any successful online movements, they're all about creating communities and creating a brand and an identity. And so I think the best uses are when you're able to, when I've seen, you know, whether it's us with the USG or a specific ambassador, be able to cultivate an identity and a brand, whether around climate change, around, I don't know, interfaith engagement, you know, any number of things, that you have a community that's interacting and engaging. That's when we do it best. I mean, we have a social media property called, a Facebook page called Innovation Generation, talking about innovation and entrepreneurship, that has 3 million users that we can actually share tools with. So I think best is when we're able to demystify what our bureaucracy is and what it does. And then I think the worst are, you know, on the front page. I mean, I think those are pretty obvious, and there will be missteps along the way when you're, you know, releasing something that was very kind of top-down and hierarchical and making it more diffuse.
Katie.
This is really racking my memory to come up with some, you know, and actually some of these PJ might be able to tell the better story. But, you know, again, I don't think there's a good and bad. I think, again, back to kind of thinking about adaptation and iteration, we're all learning here. And I think as long as that is hard to say in the moment when the press is beating down on you because you have missed a nuance, as we were talking about earlier, or you misspelled something, God forbid, in 140 characters. I mean, there's like the pain that goes through your heart when you realize, oh man, I may have just really screwed this up. I can't even, and then you think about the ripple effect for how that it could impact policy or your job. And so I think, you know, a lot of the training is about this is an on-the-record policy. This is an on-the-record engagement, and treat it as such. And, you know, one example, and actually, again, this is a great one that PJ probably knows the story better, is was it in Madagascar that there was rumors of a riot starting, and that some of these, I think potentially, was it rebels who were hiding out in the embassy? And so the news was spreading very quickly that the embassy might have been harboring some rebels. And anyway, faster than the mainstream media could pick up the story and try to figure out what was going on, and were people in the embassy or were they not, and was the U.S. embassy on the side of these rebels? And I'm sure I'm telling the story a little bit off, but the main context is right. And at the end of the day, it was through, I think, the State Department tweeting and letting the public know about what was actually going on, that it was able to diffuse the situation and the information faster than if we had waited for CNN or an Al Jazeera or CBS to come into the situation. And so oftentimes I think where embassies are getting it right, where ambassadors are getting it right, is that in terms of crisis and in terms of needing to be quickly reactive with a statement or a sentiment, these tools have an amazing ability to accelerate help and assistance and to diffuse possibly tense situations. They can also be used for bad, but I mean, I think also about any of you mentioned Boston earlier, you know, thinking about the Haiti earthquake, I did a lot of work on that. A lot of these tools were really instrumental, and the folks who used them in a way to help, you know, navigate people to assistance and help quickly, where otherwise it could have taken days or hours to locate people or get them vital information about who was safe and who was not. So I think I'm sidestepping your negative question.
No, actually, that was a very good answer, I thought. So, Gianni, your best and worst uses, then we're going to take some questions from the audience.
Not including mine, okay? Not including mine. Actually, these Italian kids collected Gianni Riotta's worst 10 tweets that you can still find online. Actually, they were kind of not exactly the worst. The worst is the New York Times bureau chief lady that inflames her readers so much that talking about web diplomacy, that she has to accept a disclaim on her Twitter handle saying these tweets have been approved by the editors of the New York Times. And this is an example of why web diplomacy and web reporting is very difficult, because I'm positive, I don't know the colleague, but I'm positive the colleague to be assigned to such a prestigious a position as the Middle East web correspondent for the New York Times. She's a great professional. But what did she do wrong? The fact that our copy takes time. You think, you write, to file, your editor reads, it takes time for you. Tweet, it takes 1 second. My friend, Professor Srinivasan at Columbia University, has this great example that you are at home and you say something to your wife and then you go like, oh, honey, don't tweet that. Oh, sorry, I already did. Okay? And this is fun and you laugh. But then when you are the bureau chief for the New York Times, that kind of immediacy kills you. One worse example that is a wonderful example is during a shelling in Gaza, the IDF Twitter handle and the Hamas brigade, Qassam brigade Twitter handle start trading barbs. And this is something that you read on the school books about the World War I, that they were shouting insults from one trench to the other during the winter, and they did exactly the same. And it was very interesting. It's a works example, but it was very interesting because you could weigh the real violence, the brutal hatred that they were like throwing at each other. The good example to me is what Pope Francis is doing. You may not be aware of this, but the Pope actually tweets, and his handle is Pontifex. And Pope Ratzinger, that is a professor and a theologian, wouldn't work on Twitter because he would like tweet something that was, I tried to read it in Italian or in English, even tweets in Latin, and I would never exactly get, because it was like something very philosophical compressed in 140 characters. Papa Bergoglio, the Pope Francis, is like a street priest. He's an Argentinian guy, a true porteño from Buenos Aires, and he warms you up. He's funny, and of course I went in trouble into that too, because I suggested in Italian column that Pontifex is not good for him anymore. While Pontifex was a good Twitter handle for Ratzinger, it doesn't work for Bergoglio, because Bergoglio is not Pontifex, he's something. And of course I got scolded in public, but the Pope is doing great on Twitter.
I thought the most informative tweet was from that
and yes, he has more followers than us.
Yeah. Okay. I thought the most informative tweet was from that Pakistani guy who just happened to live next to bin Laden in the middle of the night saying, hey, what's up with all the helicopters there? Let's take some questions from the audience. If you raise your hand, we have a gentleman right here. Give us your question. Sure, go ahead. There's a microphone coming right here. And if you can give us your name and your organization.
Sedig, the PBS Online NewsHour. All this social media is carried on this thing called the internet. What we are vividly learning now and what we learned a few years ago in another case is that it looks like in the age of the internet there is no such thing as confidentiality or secrecy in the conduct of diplomacy in government. I don't know if any of you State Department folks want to address that point.
Good question. Is confidentiality dead? PJ?
Yes. Next question. No, I think that because the internet is connecting so many people, and as Daryl was saying, including the spectator. I mean, the Bin Laden raid was secret; it wasn't invisible. And the President of the United States was scooped on Twitter. He couldn't get to the podium to announce what had happened before someone beat him to the punch. So the internet carries and gives you access to high quality information and perspective that challenges what governments have in some cases. So what I do think it potentially eliminates is what governments have always relied on to some extent, which is plausible deniability. Take drones, for example. It is something that we Americans think is the perfect tool for conflict in the 21st century. Most of the world disagrees with us. We talk about drones in general terms. but we consider operations secret. But they're not a secret to populations around the world that are directly affected by them. You know, they see them, they feel them, they have an opinion about them, mostly negative. They want to have a conversation about them. And for the moment, our approach to this tool inhibits us from having that kind of two-way conversation that the technology allows us to have. But they're not really, you know, we exist now in an era of open secrets, whether it's about drones, whether it's about Mr. Snowden, whether it's about an issue I came to know a little bit about, WikiLeaks. And so a lot of what in traditional diplomacy has always occurred behind closed doors is now seeping out into the open, which is you know, presents a conundrum for policymakers, and ultimately it means that public diplomacy is an increasingly important dimension of diplomacy. You have to not only assess what the policy should be, but how the policy is going to be received in your own domestic audience and in target audiences around the world. And I know from personal experience, it's very difficult to communicate to your own people. It's really, really hard, you know, to communicate not only to your own people, but also, you know, to other publics. You know, not long ago, through something called the United States Information Agency, and because of the media environment, say 50 or 60 years ago, we could say one thing over here, we could say another thing over here, and those two facts would not necessarily connect. It was called propaganda, right? Now, if you say one thing over here, it's a matter of seconds or minutes or hours before that fact joins up with that fact or that perception. And so learning how to communicate globally is a very significant challenge for diplomacy, but it also means that if you're doing something over here, it's ultimately and inevitably going to be known over here. And that has to be factored into your policy and what you say about it, and as we know in the case of Egypt, what you don't say about it.
Okay, great way to answer that. I have a question right here. We can get a microphone over to him. There's one coming over to you right there.
Hello, Ivan Butina, communications consultant and founder of Italian CDC. So you've been talking most about public diplomacy and the use of social media, in this case, from government to people. How about people-to-people diplomacy and using social media in that context? For example, Sweden was the first country that actually opened up their official account to the people of Sweden. So what you already have there is a government facilitating its own people communicating to people of other countries. And what do you think about using social media to facilitate communication between the population of different countries? Thank you.
Maybe Katie or Zita can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen the @Sweden account, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure that we're ready for @USA, but you know, I think that you know, part of what the State Department does do is through programs like Tech Camp, we travel to meet with civil society organizations to help introduce them to local technology networks, to help introduce them to technology experts from the US, and to help train them on how to use those tools so that ultimately we're all learning how to increase our digital literacy so that we can all be practicing digital diplomacy. I think that's one way the government can add value, is that we can help provide this training, just like we have for years provided, whether we're providing access to education or language learning or other types of capacity building, democracy strengthening. So too are we now thinking about how we, in a digital age, train people to use digital tools. And I think, every agency, at least I can speak for the US government, every agency is thinking differently and sometimes collectively about how to use these tools among employees. And I would say, at the State Department, we have, a program called Corridor, which is like the State Department version of Facebook, right? It's not public, it's behind a firewall so that, employees can talk freely to one another. But, I'm used to looking up Crowley, PJ in Outlook and seeing his name and emailing him and trying to introduce myself and should we meet on the corner and I'm wearing a blue dress and what are you wearing? You know, and now we're developing systems and programs that are internal Facebook so I can go look up PJ's profile. I can see what he looks like, I can see what he works on, what's his portfolio, maybe where's he been based prior to being in Washington. I think we're trying to take the tools that exist publicly and how do we apply them to make us better internally as well and how we work. And so I think we're constantly learning from other governments as well. I mean, the UK does a tremendous amount, Italy does a tremendous amount. How are we learning from the processes that others are implementing and how do we bring them here?
Okay.
Just quickly add that, you know, and increasingly a part of my job is the domestic component of youth engagement that I'm doing. And partly that's because of the awareness that young millennials have of a bigger world, that they're connected to things that are, you know, their worlds are bigger than the ones of generations before them. And they live in a way that they would like to be connected to people who are thinking the same things as they are and who are, you know, more importantly, wanting to solve some of the challenges that they're facing and see us as a facilitator or connector. So I'll say, like, in ad hoc ways, I see myself playing that role and doing that because there's such a warm reception from young Americans who want to engage, who want to figure out how to connect. And if you look at, you know, just the challenges that we face around the world, they're cross-cutting, they're interconnected, they defy nation-state borders. And so they, you know, those linkages, those connections, whether around, I mean, I think one place that we've done it really well, engaging domestic populations and international work, is around human trafficking. And so I think you'll see this happen around issue-based areas more than, you know, constituent to constituent, because it's just too big. And there's too many disparate interests. But I think once you can, you know, really pinpoint, you know, this diaspora community is going to have an interest in, a special interest in Haiti or in the Caribbean or, you know, in any place in the world. How do we leverage their assets in the work that we all want to do and the challenges we all want to get to?
Okay, there's a question in the very back. There's a microphone right behind you. Yep.
Thank you. My name is Ann Lilina, and I work in cybersecurity. My question for the panel is, there is a dark side to this, and that is this wonderful technology, of course, also has bred and is breeding an increasing number of digital crooks of all sorts, the minor ones, the not so minor ones, and the very dangerous ones. So I'd like your thoughts on what countries, governments, as well as individual companies are doing about this. When I say individual companies, the internet service providers, that's one thing. And the second thing is, if everyone is connected, that is a huge strain on the current communications infrastructure. What are your thoughts on increasing the infrastructure available to all?
Gianni, you want to take that?
Thank you very much. It's an excellent question. Analysts of the web tend to be divided. There are optimists like Professor Jarvis, Professor Weinberger, and pessimists like Mr. Morozov or Jaron Lanier. And I think that they're both right, or if you prefer, they're both wrong, because there is no dark side of the web. There is a dark side of our societies, and there is no good side of the web. It's like whatever we have said that is good about the web, transparency, putting people together, and openness, is not inherent to the web. That was actually, when I talk to kids that are like saying the freedom of the web, they like actually started as a Cold War, very nasty, very secret military project. And the fact that it then evolved in something that we share a pizza recipe or our personal pictures tells you how wonderful our society is. There's something that was meant to protect us from the Soviet Union. Actually, now we deal and we get a girlfriend in, or a boyfriend in Moscow. But what you're saying is that, yes, the web is the perfect place for those kind of dark forces to develop. People that want to get your money, people that want to get your data, people that want to get your identities. And if you see, I mean, again, my friend Guido Limpio is one of the best experts about international terrorism. But if you see how the new terrorists are recruited, most of them are recruited on the web. And when people say, you see, it's the web fault. If you read Conrad in the 19th century, they would be recruited on a coffee shop or giving them a pamphlet, because that's where you will find terrorists. So, sure, we need to work more on security, both as nations and as companies, and maybe as individuals we should be a little less naive than we are. I mean, sometimes when like terms of those contracts that all our social media give us, try to read them, try to understand what they say. And I definitely agree with what you were saying, that openness is a great tool that democracies can use, but the example that you gave about the drones is perfect. And when people tell you that, I honestly, if I want 30 more seconds, I laughed when there was this NSA trouble, and people were, you remember the movie Casablanca, when the Inspector Renault was shocked? He was shocked. They're spying on us. The United States, on a lies. Come on, I'm shocked. So I was shocked. I was really shocked. At the same time, if you say, is Washington, are you guys paying a price for the way the secret program was handled? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. In public and in private. Because the way China and Russia snatched the baton of being the good guys I'm disgusted by that. But is that working on the web? It's working. It's working. So we have to start counter working on that.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Right here is a young lady with a question. There's a microphone coming up to you.
Hi, my name is Eileen. I'm with the National Institutes of Health. I would like to know, post-discussion, we talked a lot about engagement and the importance to converse via these different social media. I was wondering if there's anything being done to understand the nature of the conversations and to understand the individual, in particular the minority opinion, amid this influx of information.
Okay, anyone on the panel? Don't be shy. PJ?
We're listening to all of the conversations. No, I mean it's a great point. If you want a homework assignment, I'm a professor after all. You know, when you go home tonight, Google something called the Egypt Influence Network, and up will come this kind of blue, red, and purple blob, and it was developed by a technologist out at Stanford, but it shows the Twittersphere at the time of the Arab Spring in Egypt, 2 years ago. The red circles are tweeters in Arabic. The blue circles are tweeters in English. The purple circles are those who tweet in both. And you can tell there are hubs, primarily the purple, who are able to translate the conversation from English to Arabic and back and forth. Wael Ghonim was one of them, and so they are the new digital elites. And I asked one of them, I was on a panel in New York a couple of years ago, and I said, did anyone at the U.S. Embassy know you existed when the day Mubarak fell? He said, no. They do now, but they didn't then. And I do some lecturing at the war colleges, and I always show that, and I say to the military guys, you're scared to death of this. You want to control it, you want to know what they're thinking, you should know what they're thinking, but you want to control it, and if you can't control it, you want to shut it down. I said, you can't do it. First of all, you can't do it. The information infrastructure, as we know, is now too dense. As Mubarak tried to disconnect his country from the internet, he couldn't do it. But rather than try to control it, you should engage it. to know exactly what they're thinking. Don't think, there's the military, spent 26 years in the military, there's an instinct, well, if they don't agree with us, then there must be a disinformation campaign going on. No, they might just disagree with what you're doing. So use that as a form of intelligence. What are the people thinking? You're never going to go to war in a defined battlefield anymore. You're going to go to war into the middle of a living, breathing social entity, and that entity is connected. They're going to be impacted by what you do. They're going to have an opinion about what you do, and if you ignore that that network, you do so at your peril. So it's a great opportunity, and so for the embassy, for any embassy or an entity to know, what is your digital environment, and it's an opportunity to engage, but it is an opportunity to have that kind of two-way conversation. But one thing that bureaucracies have to do better is listen. That's the great challenge.
Okay, we have just a little bit more time. Any other questions? Over here. There's a microphone coming up from behind you.
And PJ, you're probably going to jump on this one, but not so long ago, there was a love-hate relationship between government and the press, the media. And you loved them and you hated them, but you also went out and drank with them and had dinner with them and so on and so on. And they'd beat you up, and then you'd take them aside and give them a story. And it worked for decades, perhaps longer. Mass media, as we used to know it, where the newspapers reigned and then the networks and so on, that's going away. How has that changed the job that you used to hold, where when you need to get a message out, you no longer can call up a friend and say, let's have a drink and plant the story and have a sense of where it's going to go? You've lost your frenemy in that sense. How does this change things?
You're right, I'll drop in that one. I don't think mass media has gone away at all. It's all there, but it's going faster. And that's a danger for media, which is now you can produce a book in a relatively short period of time. What the role that used to be played by news magazines, the ones that step back and evaluate and give perspective, they're now dailies, right? Time doesn't publish, or U.S. News and Report doesn't even publish a physical magazine anymore. They're online every day. So it's actually, there are a handful of magazines. Within 5 years, no magazine in America will be printed, will actually have a physical copy. It'll all be online. But the whole news cycle is accelerating. So now now you have contemporaneous history in books that provide you that first perspective. Bob Woodward created this idea that there'll be a book every time a new administration comes into office. There'll be a book at the halfway point, and there'll be a book at the end. That's your first draft of history. The difference is that where, yes, the media and government used to be at war with each other, now, foreign policy is still largely an elite enterprise, and the media are part of the elite. So you have journalists who have covered people in a campaign. They come in and cover them in government. They've got, well, what used to be called a Rolodex. Now it's a contact list. So why does government leak? Because a good journalist will know precisely somewhere down in the bowels of an organization who's that person who's got that bit of information, and you put together 20 bits of information, all of a sudden you've got the story on the front page of the paper, and then you've got the FBI investigating where that leak come from. So the relationship between the media and government is changing. But by the same token, as I said in the beginning, that the challenge for government is there's probably no such thing anymore as covert action. Everyone's connected. Or everyone will be connected at some point in time. So if you do something like send 2 helicopters into a small village not far from Islamabad, it's going to be noticed right away. You have a finite amount of time. You can create the narrative around that before somebody else creates that narrative, for you.
Actually, at Brookings, we are right under the helicopter flight plane into the Pentagon. So I feel like I'm an early warning sign now in terms of stuff that happens in the military area. One more question, gentleman right there. There's a microphone coming over to you right there.
Mikhail Bell, Examiner.com. I'm worried about technology, so this is right down my alley. A lot of people, several billion, are on the internet right now, but there's several billion who don't have internet access. How is that framing the way that you guys are moving forward with diplomacy and the way that we're going to be looking at that, since we're talking about kind of building culture, building good practices, when we're going to have about 5 billion more people getting internet access in the next decade or so?
I mean, I would say this is where mobile technology plays a role, because in a lot of those places, they are skipping the PC and the landline phase and going directly to cell phones. And so the way in which digital diplomacy is going to play out there is through mobile devices. You're seeing it in Latin America, in Africa, certain parts of Asia. So that's the part that we're paying very close attention to. I don't know if there are other panelists who would.
And I would just add that I think, you know, the demand for connectivity is something I can't even define, right? It is everywhere. There's a demand to be connected. I mean, Burma is going to be online soon, and it's already happening, and I see nods in the front. I mean, it is coming, and in places where it doesn't exist, it's beginning in mobile, and you know, undersea cables are coming in, and companies are going to make that process happen because there is a need to expand, there is a need to grow, there is want from communities to grow and grow their economies. And so I think, you know, the ambassador said this in his opening, but digital is still a complementing tool to traditional diplomacy. Ultimately, we're still talking about diplomacy as a means of communication and talking and learning and listening. And the digital tools are accelerating that, or are changing perhaps the mode of communication. They're maybe changing our tone. But ultimately, we're still engaging in diplomacy just as much as we did 20 years ago. It's just that these tools have changed the environment in which we do the same thing we did. And now we do it maybe with a bigger audience, or we get to do it with more people, or our message bounces from here to there faster. But I think it's still the same. And so I think also as a government, I know some of the programs that state does, you know, are about building connectivity and how do we help support conversations that build infrastructure in countries and places where it doesn't exist, and how do we get the private sector excited about investing and putting connectivity where it isn't. You know, I think those are ways we can add value, but I think it's coming. Not to say that we've stopped what we are doing, or traditionally we're doing.
So I think that you're asking a question that's a little bit different from diplomacy and more around, you know, what's our foreign policy priority? That, you know, do we see this as a priority or a space that we want to help countries grow in that have large potential when they go online? And I think the linkage for us, I think, is between how do them going to digital markets or mobile markets create economic growth opportunities, job creation, around innovation. You know, what are the markets that are going to open up for these things that are going to create, you know, stability and healthy communities? I mean, ultimately, that's what we want. And so I think when you look at a place like India, I think 10 or 20% wired. It's 150 million users. I mean, huge potential in India for where that's going and where the innovation is going to come from for creating solutions to kind of the bigger challenges that we see. I don't think that they're going to come here. They're going to come from those spaces that are really growing really quickly and catalytically, and we want to help kind of enable that.
And in China, each 10 percentage point increase in usage is 120 million people. So,
although in China, if you go to Beijing and you try to sign on to Twitter, you can't, because they're deathly afraid that somebody will put hashtag Tiananmen. And if you try to log into the New York Times, you can't, because they're still angry over the front page story in the New York Times about the princelings and the fortune they have. So I mean that is the contest. I mean, the internet can be a tremendous accountability vehicle, and can empower people to make government better. But obviously there's a centrifugal force to this. And there will still be these forces of resistance the magic of the digital era is that it is not social media by itself. It is the synergy of social media connected to satellite television, connected to other forms of information communication technology, and these are hard things to turn off.
By the way, just one quick footnote to that. I was in Beijing 2 weeks ago. The Chinese government is not nearly as efficient as we imagine they are. I was able to use Twitter half of the time. Half the time they blocked me, half the time I tweeted. So I thought that was interesting. We're out of time, but I want to thank PJ, Zeenat, Katie, and Gianni, and thank you very much for coming out as well. And thanks to the Italian Embassy as well. Thank you.